In preparation for this talk today, I had a lovely chat with Greet and Sylvie in Belgium, who are in the room today, and we all found out we were wearing the blue of Flax. So we had a chuckle ahead of our chat, and it's a delight to welcome Sylvie De Costa and Greet Verschatse to the talk this afternoon. And I'm not sure, is it yourself, Sylvie, who will lead off?
Yes, I will do it.
Welcome. And from Textile Museum in Kortrijk in Belgium, a very resonant town for many Europeans. The Scots and the Irish both did a lot of trading up to the 50s in Kortrijk, which was the centre. And indeed, there's a Belfast Strasse not far from the Textile Museum. And we're tracing there's a lovely story that the Scots and the Irish were together in that wonderful trading bloc. And the Irish were known to like a drink, and the Scots to drive a hard bargain. So we were a canny bunch, all told. Over to you, Sylvie.
All right. Yeah, there we are. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, John, of course, for the introduction. So in my talk today, I would like to share our story about the choices we made and why we made them, not only in the museum itself, but also in the ways we reach out and we try to make the Flax story relevant to a wide and diverse audience. Because although Texture is a relatively small museum in a city that's probably not on your A-list tourist destination, it has a unique collection, and that allows us to share an internationally relevant historical narrative that's deeply rooted in the region's DNA. And in the context of this roundtable, I propose to focus more specifically on the community participation and creating value for tourism. But maybe let me start with a short history lesson, because from the 1850s, a new industry sprung up along the banks of the River Lys and went on to conquer the world, and that was the flax processing. Kortrijk flax was known as the best flax available, and the city became an important hub in the international flax trade. Today, you can still see traces of this industry all over the region, in the landscape, in the many businesses rooted in the flax industry, and maybe even in the inhabitants' mindset. And more than a century, flax processing brings wealth and employment, but it was hard hit by the crisis at the end of the 60s. And many people realized that an important chapter in our past would be lost, and they went out to look for tools and machines and clothing and photographs. And so the museum was a private, very bottom-up initiative, really a museum by and for the flax community. And for most of the people in those days, visiting it was like taking a walk through their own past. It was a very nostalgic experience, but over time, the number who had experienced these glory days of the flax industry obviously decreased, as did the museum's visitors. And this became the main challenge for us, in fact, how to share this fascinating flax story with an audience that often doesn't even know the word flax anymore. And an important decision for us was that we moved to a new location, and that was a flax warehouse of the Linen Thread Company next to the River Lys that's so important for our story. And we're now situated in the city center, touristically more interesting and more meaningful. And the architects transformed it and gave it a modern look and feel, and they used industrial elements to really highlight the past of the building, creating an open space that reminds of the constant buzz and the activities of the old days. And flax is also used in the museum's interior with flax board panels, linoleum flooring, flax insulation, linen curtains, so that the building itself is a testimony of the versatility of the flax products as well. It's a sort of practice what you preach, you could say. And although flax is still the main theme, the story has been expanded to an inspiring experience about entrepreneurship and craftsmanship in textiles. And so we developed 3 galleries, 3 floors with 3 different atmospheres. So let me walk you through them very quickly. So the visit starts in the Wunderkammer, and that's a very tactile, interactive DIY lab where you can test, smell, feel, taste the different projects of this wonderful plant. And it's really to discover that's not something only of the past, but actually still very relevant today, and that designers and scientists and entrepreneurs leave no part of it unused. And then in the list room, that's the second floor, we dive back in time. And there we learn about how the flax industry was really the driving force in the economic development from an agricultural region or an agricultural area to what we call the Texas of Flanders today. And that's a fascinating history with thinkers and risk takers in the leading role. And that's told via objects, but also via testimonials, animations, and interactive tables. And then at the second floor, you will find the treasury. And that's a more intimate room to marvel at the beautiful linen damasks, the laces, fine fabrics from our textile collection of almost 12,000 objects. And that's more in temporary presentations. And that's where we invite also curators from different backgrounds, like, for example, the Dutch trend watcher Lee Edelkoort, maybe you know her, for a fresh take on our collection. But that's only the bricks, of course. So let me shift over to our audience development, because there we try to choose, we chose to make the difference with small sized rather, but innovative projects. And we try to connect the region's rich flax heritage and contemporary industrial society. And we love those synergies at the crossroads of heritage and crafts and innovation. And we try to become an open museum that invites artists and artisans and the industry and, of course, the public to explore new aspects or to challenge it. And so community participation is therefore something that we really try to embrace. An example maybe, that's the Textile project. That's our label where artists and designers are connected to family-run businesses in the region. And the result is a meeting of all techniques and high-tech production, which is always linked to the collection of the museum or the story of the museum. And for texture, it's never simply a design assignment, but for us, it's rather a different way of storytelling with a strong focus on participation of specific communities. Let me give you an example. Our third Textile, for example, was the perfume of the river Lis. And that's about the texture has a material collection, but that stories and memories are as important. And we had the feeling that one element was missing in the museum, and that was the smell. Because everyone who grew up in the flax knows that the whole region really bathed in a special fragrance during the retting season. So the perfume of the river Lis. And some believe it was a smell of wealth, but for others it was only an unbearable stench. And in any way, it belongs really to the collective memory of the region. And it brings out a lot of stories about youth, about summer, about hard work. And this was the ideal starting point for Peter de Costa. And he's a Belgian olfactoric artist. And it was quite a challenge for him to reproduce this smell in this lab, because as some of you may know, retting in the rivers is prohibited since the 1940s. But luckily he could count on the experience of the last flax company, Montmorency, using bunkers for artificial retting. And there you could still see a meadow full of drying flax chapels in summer. Important to know in this project is that that a group of former flax workers is still connected to the museum, and they are called the Friends of Flax. Average age, I think, 85 years, but with an incredible source of stories about flax heritage and technical knowledge. And they were, as a council of the wise, or a smell panel, as we know them, they were involved in this process to see if it was possible to capture this intangible heritage in a perfume bottle. And the result was a unique installation, but also a strong program about smell and memory, perfume workshops, a video booth, slam poetry. And we even managed to get the exact scientific formula to produce liters and liters of retting water for eternity. My second case is more related to tourism. As I told you, the story is so connected with the region. We really want the people to go out, not only stay in the museum, but really go out and discover it themselves. And the combination of authentic relics and traces in the landscapes invites to visit the region, and the flax heritage in that way becomes really a theme for ecotourism and regional marketing. We're very lucky to be at the crossroads of a large Flemish cycling network. So we develop every year's flax safaris, and that's inspired by a flax spinner in the 50s who always went on a so-called safari to the Normandy to go and check on the quality of the flax fields himself. And so we invite people to spot as many flax fields as they can. And in Belgium, COVID made everybody rediscover the joy of walking and cycling. And this kind of ecotourism really gives a glimpse, I think, of agricultural life behind the corner. Of course, it's important that this was also supported by a media mix of a website, an app, a print campaign, and a social media campaign around the figure of Lynette. That's a figure of Arnaud van Robijs. A little bit of a gimmick, but also a poetic way, I think, to show beauty and life as it is between the growing flax. And apparently she has already some friends all over Europe, Marijke, Maya and Lino, I think, doing the same thing. So it would be great if you could make it in an international story next year. So any candidates are always welcome. And we believe also that inspiring industrial sites with new destinations, like for example here a B&B or a restaurant, can stimulate people also to embrace this part of their heritage. Because if this is properly done with an architecture of high quality, it can even have real touristic value as well. And it's our experience that if you can slide in some of these more lifestyle points of interest next to the heritage, like creative hotspots or pop-up summer bars or kids-proof events or company visits even, it's more likely that touristic partners will be happy to pick it up. And for us, I think this extramurals program, as you call it, maybe doesn't bring in one-on-one extra visitors to the museum, but we hope it's really created an awareness of the living flax sector today as a small, maybe, but an important economic sector. And I think if this tempts people to know more about this versatile crop, then we gained. And so maybe to conclude, I think the museum has been built by and for the people of the region, and we invested a lot of time to and effort also to detect this passion and the stories of the flax workers and to share them with the region. And we want to take care of this heritage, of course, but also make it relevant for tomorrow at the crossroads of looking back and thinking forward, of craft and technology, and also always with an open mind. So as I try to show you today, I think community participation and regional marketing are important tools for us in our audience development. And I hope to welcome you in the following months or years, maybe, to discover our story about passion, about product innovation, about the families behind the machines, about trial and error, about ups and downs, about perseverance. So I say, let's meet in Kortrijk. Thank you.
Wonderful, Sylvie. Greet, would you like to come in at this point? Thank you for putting the links in. Sylvia, just a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I've enjoyed my 3 visits. It's been a mecca for me. Really a really destination within the Kortrijk and Flanders region. Really beautiful. Greet, would you like to come in at all?
Yes. Hello.
Welcome.
I was thinking about the reason why we organize those cycling tours. And that's a good idea, maybe for tourism as a whole, because there is a link with flax all over. You can visit a region at a certain amazing tempo. You also have the opportunity to see a flax field growing, which is not obvious for most of us because it is difficult to discover. And therefore, we had set up a map with different points of interest, which is, of course, on social media, and where you can find growing crops. So that is interesting for seeing the flax flowers. It's also interesting because there's a link with a bike. Maybe you mentioned, or you saw it in the presentation of Sylvie, but in the Museum of Texture, we present a bicycle. So why is that? Because in the modern materials, flax is being used. So not everybody knows that, but that's a nice link between the cycling tour and the flax product. A third thing is that you have to be aware that flax crops is always on different places. So if you want to look out for those places, we had mentioned it in one of the presentations, that you need to change every year, the place where flax is being grown. So that makes the discovery of those places more special. I would compare it with the Japanese tradition of having the wonderful trees, I don't know the word in English, the cherry
trees, yes.
Cherry trees, which is a huge tradition there. We should have this about the flax growing beautifully, fields and beautiful blue weaving. It's like a poem. So if we could do this all over our flax countries, this would be amazing. We should make each other more strong to have a kind of worship for those blue, beautiful flowers. And the bike is a very good idea, to make use of the bike for discovering those blue, beautiful fields. So that's what we're trying to do, and what maybe could be an issue for us to share.
Great, thank you so much, Sylvie, for your presentation. I'm just going to reflect on my 2018 bike ride in Flanders, and the first time that I saw a flax field in any extent. And it was past the blue flowering stage, at that lovely silvery green seed head stage, and the whole thing, it's a very handsome crop, vertical, the whole thing was just like the most beautiful ocean waving in. It was romantic and emotional.
So you always remember the first time, so that's important.
Yes, 100 years ago, you wouldn't have grown up in Northern Ireland without knowing what a blue field of flax was like. It was 200 years ago, the 1820s, when that was last a common sight in Scotland. But we've seen a little bit of it in the last month with our festival growers here in Scotland. Look, as usual, we've run out of time for an extensive set of questions, but I hope we've had some flavor of what it might be to invest in the growing of flax, the processing of flax, the development of an appreciation of flax, educational community and tourism potential of this extraordinary product. I'd like to just leave you with the notion of, well, first of all, I should ask, are there any other, there's some wonderful comments in the chat section. Thank you very much for everyone participating. Does anyone have any burning questions for Sylvie? I see Mark Watson of Historic Environment Scotland was asked about the building itself. Actually, it was an old, not a mill, but a storage unit, isn't that correct? That has been redeveloped as the museum. Any other questions just now? Look, I would love to populate this with some, oh, Angela, go for it.
I just wanted to ask Sylvie if you can talk about the third floor at Texture, where there's visiting exhibits of all kinds of different political and, like, you know, textile related curated projects.
I think you are talking about Textile and Resistance exhibition.
Yes, that one.
Yeah. That was an exhibition that we presented together with the Fashion Museum in Antwerp. And it was just one example, because we as I explained, flax is still the main theme of our museum, but in our presentation or in our exhibition policy, we try to broaden that up, and we really try to be a museum of textiles in general, because that's has also to do with the region and the city of Kortrijk. That's a UNESCO Creative City of Design with a lot of textile players, mostly in technical textiles, and also with the industry and many educational institutions in the area. So that's a theme that's really important for our region, and so we try to work on that as well. But textile as a way to speak about diversity and a way to reach out to different communities. It's really an international language, and we try to work on that as well. So and that exhibition was an example of that. It's not so easy because I don't like, how do you say, specific projects or something. I think it need to really to spread out in every aspects of the way you work as a museum, also front office, back office. So it's not so easy to do with all these little things. We try to be as open and as open-minded to all kind of communities as we can.
Thank you so
Exactly.
much, and thanks.